In Songs for the People, the abolitionist, journalist, and poet Frances Ellen Watkins Harper wrote, "Let me make the songs for the people, songs for the old and young, songs to stir like a battle cry wherever they are sung. Our world so worn and weary needs music pure and strong to hush the jangle and discords of sorrow, pain, and wrong." From Frances Ellen Watkins Harper to Whitney Young Jr., from Alandria Williams to our own Reverend Duncan Teague and beyond, Black Unitarian Universalists continue to challenge, expand, and celebrate UU faith. How does the work of Black leaders and scholars challenge learned, colonized narratives? How can we re-examine self-love, hope, history, and legacy through Black experiences and study? Explore all this and more with us through our worship series, Black Expressions of UUism.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Atlanta and our live stream worship. This morning is a multi-generational service where you will have stories and songs for all ages. We're so glad you're here in this first Sunday of Black History Month. We're going to be featuring many powerful spirituals this month and songs by great African-American Unitarian Universalist musicians like Dr. Issei Barnwell, who is a UU music leader, song leader, and music director, and original member of Sweet Honey in the Rock. This first song is by Dr. Barnwell. It's number 1051, We Are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great vision. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Willie, so much. Good morning and welcome to Sunday morning worship with the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Atlanta, where we are transforming lives through courageous action and soulful connection, My name is Reverend Taryn Strauss. I am senior minister here, and so delighted to kick off this new worship series, Black Expressions of Unitarian Universalism, and also likewise so excited to have so many friends with us leading worship today. So just get ready. This is going to be a beautiful Sunday of people sharing stories and music that is so precious and helps us make meaning of our lives along the way. Just please remember that wherever you are from, whatever path you are on, whomever you love, you are welcome here.
Good morning. I'm lay minister Tony Stringer, and I'm ecstatic to invite you to our 2022 Congregational Retreat held at Camp Michael in Toccoa, Georgia. The retreat will take place from Friday, March 25th through Sunday, March 27th. Public health precautions and details are available when you register. Sign up now as space is limited. All the coolest kids are doing it. You've got to be there. Did you miss Realm training? Do you need a Realm refresher? Does Realm intimidate you? Or do you have no idea what Realm is? Well, whichever the case may be, you can use the link dropping in the chat as I speak to get access to an instructional video from our very entertaining and non-intimidating communications director, Shay Stewart. They will help you gain easy passage into this new realm. Through the live chat, we can express love and care for each other. Please take a moment to say hello to one another and especially to anyone else who may be visiting us this morning. Wasn't it good to say hello? You can connect even more by joining our lay ministry team after service in the Zoom room social hour. We'll see you there. And once again, we are joyful that you've chosen to worship as part of this special community on this beautiful Sunday morning.
Good morning. My name is Letta Wu, and I'm a member of UUCA. I was born in Los Angeles, California, moved to Taiwan when I was 18 months old, and settled in Augusta, Georgia when I was 5. My first language was Mandarin, but I've lost most of that, and I am trying to learn. We didn't really celebrate the Lunar Chinese New Year and Chinese Spring Festival growing up in Augusta. At least it wasn't a big deal. I remember potlucks with family friends of the Chinese diaspora and some special foods like nian gao or sweet rice cake. I have faint memories of the sound and smell of fireworks. And just recently, my dad shared his childhood memories of the festival when he lived in Hong Kong and how he ate chicken, which they only had a few times a year. And because they didn't have a refrigerator, the chicken was very well salted and eaten over many weeks. I'm also grateful for new traditions, like making dumplings with my partner, Colin, and he is slowly improving his wrapper folding technique. Another new tradition these last 2 years is my family gathering on Zoom. I'm discovering this to be a time of endings and hopeful renewal. So I want to wish all of you good luck, fortune, prosperity, abundance, and health. Happy Year of the Tiger and Happy Lunar New Year. Let's say the chalice lighting words together. May the light of this flame illuminate our tradition of seeking, invite all who yearn for acceptance, and ignite our passion for justice and peace.
Our special music this morning, it comes from Dr. Glen Thomas Rideout. Dr. Glen Thomas Rideout started at University of Michigan right after I graduated, but was there at the same time as Willie. They were both there at Michigan at the same time. He was the longtime director of music at the First UU congregation in Ann Arbor, and now he is at First Universalist in Minneapolis. We used some of his videos a couple years ago, and he's gratefully made a few more for us. This is Dr. Glen Thomas Rideout.
You're divine, my divine. 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 My divine, you're divine, my divine, you're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, my beloved. Where you go, I will go. My people, my people, your people, my people. My people, your people, my people, for your people are my people, your people are mine, your people are my people, your divine, my divine, your people are my people, your people are mine, your people are my people. You're divine, my divine, my divine, your people, my people. Where you go, I will go, children. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, children. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people, your people are mine. Your people are my people, your divine, my divine. Your people are my people, your people are my people. Your people are my people, your divine, my divine. My people, your people, my people. Where you go, I will go, sister. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, ancestor. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Your people are my people. Your people are my people. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Divine, my divine. My people. Your divine, my divine. Where you are, my children. Your divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go. Beloved, my divine, your children, my people. Where you go, my people. Where you go, my people. Your people are my people. Your divine, my people. Your people are my people. Your people are my people.
Much gratitude to Dr. Glen Thomas Rideout. Thank you. Won't you please now rise wherever you are, rise in body or in spirit, and join generations of the Stringer family in today's movement prayer.
We bow to honor the spirit of life.
We lift our arms with gratitude for the gifts of spirit. We gather these gifts and embrace ourselves and breathe and smile. We share these gifts with the world. We remember to be present. Honor, gratitude, embrace, share, be present.
So for all 4 services this month, for our meditation, we'll be singing either We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder or another version of it, We Are Dancing Sarah's Circle. This is a beautiful hymn about striving for change. It's also interesting that it could have been written as early as 1750, which is almost a century earlier than most spirituals, by enslaved Liberian people here in America. It's a beautiful, powerful hymn, We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder. 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 We are climbing on. Every round goes higher, higher. Every round goes higher, higher. Every round goes higher, higher. We are climbing on. If I stumble, will you help me? If I stumble, will you help me? If I stumble, will you help me? We are climbing on.
Let us put hands upon hearts and feel the warm connection there. Let love in this moment flow. Say to yourself silently, I will love myself. I will love others. And that love will heal the world. Now we hear the joys and sorrows of this congregation. Please send love and healing energy to Carol Reinhardt. Carol is currently in Bud Terrace, rehabilitating after a hospital stay for the treatment of pneumonia. Cards, emails, and phone calls are welcome at this time. Please look in the weekly update for contact information. Please hold Betsy Rivard in your hearts. Betsy broke her kneecap and is rehabilitating at home. Cards, emails, and phone calls of support are welcome. You are invited to say the names of people you are holding in your heart this morning, someone who could use some prayer, some loving energy coming their way. Please write their name into the live chat or speak their name into this sacred moment now. May all beings find connection. May all people find comfort. May all of us find more ways to be more loving. As humans have gathered for millennia, so do we gather in our way on this day, to gently surrender to something beyond ourselves, to humbly acknowledge our mistakes, to ask forgiveness, to seek hope and renewal, to honor the earth that supports and sustains life, and to remember that all beings are inextricably and mysteriously connected, and to feel that connection. Now, we still our bodies and we still our minds. We take in a deep breath and we exhale. We relax into this space that our intentions make sacred. We enter into the wise silence.
Though the road is steep and rugged, though the road is steep and rugged, though the road is steep and rugged, we are climbing on. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing on.
I wonder if you have seen this symbol before. You may have noticed it on our altar this morning. It is a mythical bird known as the Sankofa bird, originally from the Akan tribe in Ghana. It symbolizes the practice of honoring insight and knowledge acquired from the past, the head looking backwards, as a way of understanding the present and creating a strong future, moving into the future, the feet facing forward. The practice of Sankofa recognizes how our ancestral roots inform and ground us, and asks us to honor and heed what is lasting and significant from our past. So I'd like to share a story from my past when I was a kid. In Southeast Texas, where I grew up, the expectation was that families attend church on Sundays. Although my parents had both been raised Christian, neither were church-going when I came along. My mother truly wanted to change that, but her demanding full-time job, coupled with taking primary responsibility for me, left her exhausted by Sunday. My father worked at an oil refinery with an equally grueling schedule that included overnight and weekend shifts and rotations, so church just wasn't happening for my family. When I was 5, my mother decided to reach out to the local Baptist church to ask if anyone from their neighborhood would be willing to drive me to and from church on Sundays. The congregation put her in touch with a retired couple who agreed to take on the responsibility of bringing me each Sunday. From kindergarten to 3rd grade, I went to church almost every week with this older couple. I grew to trust and love several congregants in that congregation, including, of course, the couple who committed to bring me there. During this time, my parents were having problems with their marriage. Now 8, I convinced my mother to come to church with me. She began to make connections and find support there. And then 2 years later, when my father got promoted and had more control over his work schedule, he joined us. And in the end, my whole family found a loving and supportive community that inspired us to volunteer and share our talents. I grew to be a leader in my youth group. My mother joined the choir, and my father found meaning in lay prison ministry. I wonder where my parents would be if my mother had not asked for help, or had she felt that she could not come to church because she was ashamed that her family was on the brink of falling apart. I wonder again about where I would be if there was not a village of people reaching out to support my parents so that my parents could support me. That Southern Baptist family helped my parents parent beyond their capacity. So you see, the faith community has always been central to my life and has informed what I feel is central to my calling, helping people find and foster community. Where did you come from? Is there a story from your religious or non-religious past that informs where and who you are now? So, like the Sankofa bird, we look to our past for stories and wisdom that we carry with us as we move into and create a stronger future.
Sankofa is not the only bird legend that's relevant to our worship theme this morning. There's another legend about birds that explains why enslavers in South Carolina wanted nothing to do with the Igbo African tribe. The Igbo tribe was prized throughout the southern states because they were strong, robust, and thought to be particularly well suited for working in the hot cotton and rice fields everywhere, that is, except in South Carolina. So why? Well, it seems that in 1803, a group of enslaved Igbo were loaded on a ship in Savannah, Georgia for transport to St. Simon's Island. In transit, the enslaved Igbo rose up in rebellion and took control of the ship. Their would-be enslavers were thrown or jumped overboard. The Igbo, free once again, sailed the ship on to St. Simon's. Once there, they fled into a swamp, never to be seen again. What happened to them in that swamp is a mystery, but local legend has it that they used magic to transform themselves into a flock of buzzards and then flew back to their homeland in Africa. Perhaps it is this second bird legend which made the enslavers from South Carolina decide to take a pass on future Igbo. This is a legend that makes me smile when I look back on my heritage as an African American. It's an important legend because so often when African Americans look back, like that Sankofa bird, what we see gives us more reason to cry than to smile. But even in our tears, there can be joy, and always there are lessons in courage. When I look back, I see a long line of mothers, their strong, robust arms stretching out to me across generations. Frances Jones, my great-grandmother, is one of them. Frances first tasted freedom when she was 10 years old. That's how old she was when the Civil War ended, and those enslaved in the South were free. Freedom was a sweet taste, one full of promise, just as she was. My great-grandmother Frances would do great things with her freedom, things I'm sure she could not have imagined as a 10-year-old. Frances entered freedom better prepared than most formerly enslaved African Americans of 1860s rural Alabama. Though born into slavery, Frances had the good fortune of being the daughter of a midwife. Frances had never worked the fields, never picked the cotton, never toiled under the lash of sun or whip, and never calloused her hands. She was born into a kind of privilege, if that word can be used to describe anything about the life of an enslaved person. Being the midwife's daughter, inheriting the art of birthing, had afforded Frances a measure of security. She had never faced the threat of being sold or traded. She had grown up knowing her midwife mother, if not her father. She could speak the English language the way white Southerners spoke it, with the inflection and mannerisms of the people that enslaved her. At 10, she could read, write, and calculate. And she was not fearful of admitting that she possessed these rare and useful skills, for somehow they seemed not so threatening of the Southern social order in a black girl who would one day replace her mother in delivering children of both the enslaved and the enslaver. So when the Civil War brought Frances unexpectedly to freedom at age 10, the years ahead must have seemed unbounded in their promise and their potential. And indeed they were. Frances lived to be 87. In the intervening years between her gaining freedom and her death, Frances would go from being midwife to businesswoman. She would lay claim to many acres of farmland, which she would parcel out to tenant farmers. She would grow rich from the cotton produced and sold from her land. She would purchase and drive one of the first Model T Fords in the rural South. And she would have the means and the generosity to send the children of two neighbors to the Tuskegee Institute for their education. But before she got to the full promise of her life, Frances would have to endure an act of savagery. It came a spare 10 years after she first tasted freedom. About him, very little has been passed down in my family. His name was Burkhart. He owned a grocery store. And one day, being physically bigger, stronger, and lustful, and perhaps jealous of all the things Frances was doing with her freedom, he overpowered and hurt my great-grandmother. Back then, unlike today, if you were white, the police would look the other way if you harmed a black woman. You would not be arrested, you would not go to jail, and you would not be punished for what you did. So Burkhart was able to get away with it. But it didn't stop with that one injury. Some months later, Burkhart heard that Frances had given birth to a daughter. She was an unusual daughter for a black woman to have. This daughter, whose name was Laura, didn't look black. Her skin was very fair. Her eyes were a light brown. Her hair grew straight and long down her back, eventually all the way to her waist. Burkhart saw that Frances's daughter could easily be mistaken for white, and he decided that he wanted to take the child from Frances and raise her himself. And he would have, had Frances not found the courage to say no to this man who had so badly hurt her. Frances had to flee. Like the legendary escape of those Igbo, Frances ran to keep her child and to raise her child to become a black woman. I knew Laura, Frances's daughter, in her old age, long after Frances was gone. She was my grandmother, Laura. She could easily be mistaken for white. Indeed, she could have chosen to be white. Passing for white is something many black people of that era did in order to escape to a better life. Frances chose to run away to keep her child and to raise her child to be a proud black woman. And that child, who became my grandmother, Laura, never once thought of herself and never once let anyone else think of her as anything other than a black woman. Every member of every generation of my family is told this story. My mother told it to me. I told it to my daughter, and my daughter told it to her daughter. It is our family origin story. It is what we see when we look back like that Sankofa bird. It says that we are a black family, not just by birth, but by choice. The choice that our ancestors made, the choice we make to embrace our heritage, both the parts that bring us tears and the parts like Frances and Laura's courageous story that bring us pride and joy.
I imagine by now that most of you are aware of the recent unanimous decision by McMinn County, Tennessee's Board of Education to remove Art Spiegelman's graphic novel Mouse from its 8th grade curriculum on the Holocaust. While the decision was made on January 10th, it didn't make national attention until January 27th, which happens to be International Holocaust Remembrance Day. The meeting's minutes are easy enough to find online. The board cites crude language, nudity and sexuality, and violence throughout as justification. I am familiar with Mouse, and I can say definitively, those do all exist within this Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. But as Julie Gooden, a former history teacher, said at the meeting, there is nothing pretty about the Holocaust. The board's response was that they would look for a more age-appropriate material. I am not a parent. I cannot say whether 8th grade is an appropriate age to talk about World War II history. My unit on it was in high school. I would like to give this board the benefit of the doubt that there was no sinister motive, just a profound naivete. I know nothing about them, and I cannot judge whether they are genuine. But I can say with absolute certainty, genocides cannot be sterilized. They cannot be sanitized. To attempt to do so is the gravest insult to both victims and survivors, save for its denial. and a profound disservice to learners of all ages. I am proud of this community and its commitment to stand face to face with the unjust, the unconscionable, and the uncomfortable. We uphold truth, though it may at times make us feel ill at ease, force us to face our own responsibility, or acknowledge our ignorance. Thank you for your continued dedication. Let us make our contribution to the legacy of truth-telling this congregation carries forward. This morning's offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Our offertory this morning is another arrangement by Dr. Rideout. It's many freedom songs in our hymnal, and the lyrics will be on the screen if you'd like to sing along.
I'm on my way. I'm on my way. I'm on my way. Woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Everybody say, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom land. To the freedom land. I'm on my way. I'm on my way. God, I'm on my way. I'm on my way to the freedom. To the freedom land. I'm on my way to the freedom. To the freedom. I'm on my way to the freedom. I'm on my way. Thank God I'm on my way. So come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Land with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come away this morning, land. The freedom was stayed on freedom. I'm on my way with me to that land where it was stayed on freedom. I'm on my way with me to that land. The freedom was stayed on freedom. Hallelujah,
All right. Well, that's about as big a choir as I think one person can make. Amazing. I do miss singing these songs with you. I look forward to the time that we can do that. And I am so grateful for this community where we can come together with courage to look at the difficult, the hard truths of our histories, to take a look at them together, to tell the stories of pain as well as stories of joy. Thank you so much for your generosity this morning. Won't you please join me as we dedicate this morning's offering to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action we call community. We dedicate our lives, and these are offerings. Today is the release date of a brand new publication, a powerful new collection of poems, essays, and work by Black Unitarian Universalists, including our own Tony Stringer, who we have preaching with us this morning. It is called Blue Notes, and we were very blessed to have an advanced copy, and so where we found this poem that is this morning's reading, Being Black and UU, and it is written by a young adult, Black UU young adult, and is read this morning by our own Sophia Hook.
Being UU and Black by Maya Wade Harper means watching as they put up the BLM sign and knowing the fight has hardly started. It means being coined a token and lifted up while you do all the work. It means late nights and meetings, sermons that you hope they will hear. It means answering questions that you don't want to answer and hoping it will all be enough. It means asking for more diversity, but not appropriation. It means backlash and tight smiles and exhaustion. But being UU and Black also means raising our hands and voting for justice. While friendships warm my heart, it means feeling right at home in those walls and knowing these people understand. It means education and singing and healing and marching in the cold together. It means knowing your dream is shared by others and you can accomplish it together. It means chalices, rituals, and sacred spaces. Feeling welcome and loved and holy. It means supporting values that support my people's life. It means Black spaces and spending time. Healing with those who look like me. It means knowing inside that you belong, even if sometimes it is so hard and tiring. I'm here to stay.
Where do you come from? Where are you going? As we ponder these questions about our own identities, we also wonder at the path of our religious tradition, the moments and choices that have shaped who we have become as a faith and where we are going. My colleague, Reverend Josh Pawelek, offers a caveat to this history. The story I will now tell you focuses on relationships between white UUs and African American, African diaspora, and Black UUs. That is, the racial dynamics in this story have to do with the place of African Americans in our larger white denomination in the late 1960s. We must remember Black people are not the only people of color within Unitarian Universalism. There are Native American, Latinx, Asian, Middle Eastern, South Pacific Islander UUs, not to mention biracial and multiracial UUs. Their stories are not in the story I'm about to tell. I'm naming this simply so that we don't forget our denominational story about race is expansive. It is so much more than a black and white story. Reverend Mark Morrison Reed is one of Unitarian Universalism's greatest historians, chronicling a history of broken promises and a moment of deep conflict within our faith. Morrison Reed writes, "Some ask why African Americans have not joined liberal religious congregations in larger numbers. Well, go back as far as you like, and you will find African Americans. However, they were often unsought and unwelcomed, scattered in time and place, and with a few exceptions, never formed a critical mass within a Unitarian or a Universalist congregation. And the occasions where that did happen can be traced to very specific activist ministers and committed congregations in exclusively metropolitan settings that had a significant African American middle class. The truth was that neither the Universalist Church of America nor the American Unitarian Association, separate at that time, neither of them ever gave sustained backing to African American congregations that were trying to emerge. Furthermore, prior to 1969, only 2 African Americans held significant positions of power within the denomination. Unitarian Universalism had never developed forms of worship, nor liturgy, writings, music, or theology reflective of the African American experience. Black folks came to UU congregations, not the other way around. Morrison Reed goes on to describe this moment of 1967. When it arrived, there was nothing around which to build a specifically African American UU identity, and no natural interface with the African American community at that time. After 100 years of squandered opportunities, he writes, the consequences had come home to roost that year. After Martin Luther King's assassination, as rioting engulfed city after city, it became clear that legislation had not addressed African American poverty or frustration. And that was the context for an emergency conference of UU leaders at the Biltmore Hotel in New York in October 1967. 37 of the 150 attendees were African Americans. They made up 25% of a gathering, and in a denomination where they only comprised 1%, hailing from the urban churches in a faith community that at that time was becoming more and more suburban. Soon after the conference began, 33 of the African Americans withdrew from the planned agenda to hold their own meeting. The Black Caucus met through the evening and late into the night. As they talked, they tapped into the raw emotion. Civil rights had changed the law, but had proven ineffective at remedying Black poverty. Likewise, liberal religion had failed to address the experience of Blackness or settle an African American in a major pulpit. The group called for a new agenda, and by the time they emerged, the Black Unitarian Universalist Caucus Steering Committee had been formed. They insisted that their agenda be voted up or down without debate, and that included a resolution that $1 million, which was, at that time, 12% of the UUA budget, be directed toward the Black community over a period of 4 years. Well, the conference sent shockwaves through the UUA. For many, what happened during the ensuing years would be nothing less than life-defining. A paradigm shift away from integration and toward Black self-determination was taking place. A change for which the UUA was ill-prepared at that time. 2 years later, and after more factionalism about strategy and facing a funding crisis, the UUA board reduced the Black Affairs Council annual allocation that they had previously voted to approve, spreading it over 5 years. In response, the Black Affairs Council disaffiliated, left the church. And at this 1970 General Assembly, delegates voted to discontinue funding entirely. Although the Black Affairs Council received funding from other sources and functioned for a few more years after that, the promise remained unfulfilled. Many people of all racial identities left Unitarian Universalism in response to those events. The pain, anger, and heartbreak still reverberate through our faith these more than 50 years later. I see parallels with Tony Stringer's family story. The Unitarian Universalist faith has had opportunities throughout its history to choose Blackness, to choose to align with Black UUs who were ready to lead, to determine their own expression of the faith, liturgy, and language, and to invite others to follow. Here we are again, with certain recent events resonating with that moment in history I just shared. See, there is an internal map that spans generations. Shea Stewart had a mentor who once said, "You simply lean back into your ancestors and there they are." Sankofa teaches us that we must go back to our roots in order to move forward. That is, we should reach back and gather the best of what our past has to teach us so that we can achieve our full potential as we move forward. Whatever we have lost, forgotten, forgone, or been stripped of can be reclaimed, revived, preserved, perpetuated. Let us not forget the times our religious ancestors failed to choose blackness. Let us revive the dream, and from the embers of that desire, spark a new flame that supports and loves Black expressions of Unitarian Universalism. Let us protect it and tend to it as the precious blessing that it is to our faith, to our lives, all of ours. In 2015, the seeds of Black lives of Unitarian Universalism were first planted. Those seeds have been cultivated. They have borne fruit today, and Unitarian Universalism is making good on its promise to resource and to uplift Black UU lives. Now, for the first time, we have more people of color in leadership at the UUA. We have more ministers of color and seminarians. We have new liturgies. We have spiritual ideologies forming. We have language. And we have before us an invitation to emerge into a different future. This is the blessing of Sankofa, that though our histories hold pain and triumph, they make us who we are. We take refuge in those old stories of survival, those old stories of shame. We can learn from them all as we chart our course, and we know where we belong in the trajectory of our legacy, always emerging and taking new shape amidst the backdrop of our family story. Tony's family chose blackness when they could have chosen otherwise. Unitarian Universalism can do the same now. Takia Nur Amin says, "In every moment, life is giving us an invitation." I really believe that in every moment, life is giving us an invitation to do the things that are the most loving and life-affirming, and that doing the loving and life-affirming thing is always the answer when you don't know what to do or when you are feeling unsure. There's always a moment of invitation to rethink or reevaluate, to do it better. We are being invited into this cosmic dance of renewal and joy and justice. But you have to make the justice. It doesn't just show up without our participation or our effort. Things don't just get better just by us waiting for them to happen. No. We all have to engage in the better making from wherever we are, and each moment presents an invitation for us to do that. And I don't want us to forget that. Even if, like me, you are tired or feeling frustrated or feeling unsure, the invitation to participate in a manner that is about living our values, living that love and justice, it's still there, no matter what else is going on. So ask yourself, what is the most loving, life-affirming thing that I can do in this moment for myself and for other people? To me, if we're talking about racial justice, love is about acknowledging that there has been wrong, that there has been harm perpetuated, and whether you personally feel like you participated in it or not, you could be benefiting from the inequitable results of that harm. Even if you are a person who wants to say, well, I didn't participate in making things this way, if you are benefiting from the ill-gotten gains, then you have some responsibility to make things right. This is what I teach my children, especially if you turn around and say that you believe in justice and equity. You are not let off the hook, no matter what. That is part of the call, the mandate of what it is to be Unitarian Universalist, to figure out how we live together in loving, equitable, and just relationship with one another. Each moment is an invitation to participate and to heal, emerging from our family stories, emerging from our shared history into our mysterious future.
Thank you, Reverend Strauss. Our final hymn this morning is another great arrangement by Dr. Rideout, another hymn by Dr. Issei Barnwell, a beautiful hymn that speaks deeply to Sankofa. This is Breaths.
Listen, 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 more often to things than to be. 'Tis the ancestor's breath when the fire's voice is heard. In the voice of the waters are. Those who have died and never left, the dead are not under the earth. They are in the rustling trees, they are in the fields, they are in the crying grass, they are in the moaning rocks. The dead are not under the earth. So listen more often to them that believes. Listen more often to them that believes. Tis the ancestor's breath when the fire's voice is heard. Tis the ancestor's breath when the voice of the waters are. Those who have died and never left, the dead are not packed with the living. They are with the Susan's breast, they are in the wailing child. They are with us in our homes, they are with us in this crowd. The dead are not packed with the living. So listen more often to things that to me. So listen more often to things that to me. It is the ancestor's breath when the fire's voice is heard. It is the ancestor's breath in the voice of the waters. to the ancestors' breath, when the fire's voice is heard, to the ancestors' breath, in the voice of the waters.
In January, we introduced the practice of creating a home altar by adding an item to that altar each month. And so for this month, I would like to encourage you to find a keepsake, a photo or a family heirloom that represents a story from your past, that offers you guidance and wisdom, even strength today. And perhaps you can share that story with a friend this week. Go in peace.